We're so happy that you're here. We're Susie and Otto Collins, and tonight we are talking about how your communication builds or destroys trust without you even knowing it. So thank you all for coming, and we've got a full schedule on tonight, and we'll try to wrap it up within a little after an hour. But what we thought we would do is give you some remarks about communication and trust, and then we're going to talk about your questions, because we had questions sent in from people who had signed up to see this webinar and be part of it, and we're going to use those questions and give our answers. If you have any questions, you can use the chat, and we'll try to get to them tonight. And if not, we will get back to you by email. How about that?
And just a quick reminder, the chat, for those of you who are coming in late, the chat is right below the main screen here. If you pop that out, there's a thing that says chat, and you can pop in your questions there, and we're excited to see them. And yeah, we've got a lot to cover tonight.
All right, so let's get started.
So
what's communication?
I want to start really with, just again with the topic. The whole thing we're talking about tonight is how your communication builds or destroys trust without you even realizing it. Mm-hmm. So what is communication? Yeah.
Well, I was thinking about that, and there are all types of ways to describe communication, but at its heart is you're connecting with somebody in some way to get information, to get an agreement, to something, but there is a connection.
Yeah.
Well,
the idea is you want to have a connection. Sometimes the connection, the connection is always there. It's always possible, but sometimes we lose the connection. And so I think that's the goal. That's what we want.
Yeah, exactly. And, so where does it come from, Otto?
Well, a lot of times people think that communication, that there's a goal of communication of informing somebody something or telling somebody, just sharing information. And sometimes people mistakenly think that communication is all about trying to get somebody else to do what we want. And that's kind of a big theme that we're going to be talking about throughout the night, because that's really where trust comes from.
But communication at its core comes from the beliefs that you're believing. And that's the whole thing, that whatever stories or beliefs that you tell yourself about that person, about the situation or whatever, is the way your communication comes out.
If you are in this loving space, that's what we call it. Mm-hmm. If you're in this place where you're open to something new and you're willing to see that something new, then you're going to be in a whole different space than if you weren't open to seeing that something new.
And not believing a whole lot of stories. It's like a friend of mine who is a nurse, and she teaches other nursing students, and she said she was tired one day, and her students had all these questions, and she said, well, is this pick on Angie day? And somebody said, no, we just didn't understand these concepts. And she immediately saw the stories that she was making up, and that's how she communicated. From those stories that she was being picked on.
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about here, is we all do it. We all do it from.
Yeah, and taking that story one step further is if our friend wanted to build trust, then she's going to, maybe not in that moment, maybe she just was caught up, but maybe in the future she's going to get wise to, oh, yeah, I just didn't see it that way, or I was just caught up in my thinking.
She said my ego got in the way. And whatever you want to call it.
And that's really powerful to see that.
We call it the stories in our head. And recognizing these stories doesn't mean that they go away.
Right.
But they don't interfere as much as, they used to. At least in my life, I'm seeing that, oh, I got this story running and I'm thinking that this person is doing this thing or whatever. I don't have to believe that. Let me ask some questions, and we're going to go over all that. So what about trust? What do you think trust is, Otto?
Well, trust, the way I see it, is a little different than how most people see trust. And why that is most people believe, or most people think, that I'll trust them if they do a certain something. In other words, if they act, the other people in your life,
certain way.
If they act in a certain way, then I'm going to trust them.
Yeah.
And by the way, it plays out if they do something in a certain way, or if they stop doing something in a certain way. So that trust in their mind is totally based on that other person or what's happening in that situation. If you really think about trust, and most people haven't really considered this idea, is that all trust is I'm trusting that you're going to do what I want.
And I know that sounds glib on our part.
It really does.
It's like, you might be saying.
But let's slow it down and just take that in, that in any situation where you say, I don't trust that person. I don't trust the situation is going to work out the way I want, or the way I would like, or I would intend. When you slow it down, then in that moment, I will guarantee you that there is some part of you that is fearful that you're not going to get what you want. And if you play that even deeper, it's you're not going to be okay if you're not going to get that.
Right. And we're not saying that people don't do bad things, that really hurt you. And I mean, we know, of course we know that happens. People do disappoint you. They do things out of neglect or on purpose or whatever. But what we're saying is that a blanket, well, I don't trust this person. What that really means is to do what you think they should have done. And doesn't mean it's okay, but it does mean that maybe you're okay if that doesn't, if that person is doing whatever it is they're doing at our core.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And once you start to get wise to what's really going on, and what we mean by that is that someone else just simply isn't doing what you would like, then you can start to drop down into, and begin to wonder and to begin to get curious and curiouser, if that's a word.
Yeah. And maybe there's a way to find out more about what's going on with that person, to understand more. And it might be that person, you're better off without that person in your life. I mean, there's that too.
And maybe not.
And maybe not. Right. But when you're stuck in your story about, well, I can't trust him, and there's a tightness, there's no room for finding out more. And yeah, we're gonna talk about that. Should we go on to the questions, Otto?
Yeah, absolutely. So
All
we've
right.
got a few questions, and one of the reasons that we're going to kind of format the tonight and this whole conversation that we're going to have is these questions. If you settle into the questions and you hear our answers, and again, feel free to comment in the chat. We're watching the chat as we're talking and speaking and answering the questions. One of the best things we thought we could do is take some of these questions that almost everybody either is dealing with or has dealt with, and just see if you can see aspects of what maybe has happened in your world at some point or another. And just see, I can really relate to how that person was feeling, or I can really relate to, what they might have been going through in that moment. Or you might even say, I can really see how they might have seen it differently.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really important to drop down into that place.
Okay, number one, speaking about building communication trust with someone overwhelmed is kind of the topic we're talking about in this question. How do you speak to someone about the need for building trust, communication trust, when they are already overwhelmed because of other things in their life? I don't want to add more pressure, but I want to pull away and end things because it's too much for me too.
Well, when I tune into this question and I hear this question, is that if the other person is already overwhelmed because of what's going on, then get in sync with them. Find out, how would you like me to be your friend in this moment?
Mm-hmm.
Find out how you'd like me to be your lover in this moment. Find out how like if you were that person, if you really want to build trust, then you're not going to say to them, hopefully, you're not going to say to them, get yourself together here. Mm-hmm. What you are going to do is you're going to find that space where you can see and you can feel what's going on within them, and to see how you can best be with them. Mm-hmm. There have been many times in our life, Susie, where one or the other of us has been going through something, and the other person has just had to stop and be with them. Mm-hmm. Just stop and be with that other person. And it's so critical, because if that other person is overwhelmed, you don't want to add to the overwhelm. Right. You want to show up as somebody who is in their corner, but not just in their corner as in rah, rah, I'm in your corner. It's, how would you show up as love? How would you show up as love? That is the question. How would you do that? And when you show up as love and you start to see, they're overwhelmed in this moment. Mm-hmm. How would love show up as an invitation to somebody who was overwhelmed? Then the answers start to happen for you. And you say that you want to pull away and end things. You may want to end it if the relationship doesn't serve you. But opening your heart first and seeing the connection you can make with that person, despite your stories,
is really a good way to start out with this.
Part of that also, I think, depends on what is your commitment at that moment to being together, because your commitment to being together is going to be a whole lot different if this is a situation in the very early stages of a relationship, maybe where you haven't decided, oh yeah, we're really together. Or if you're at some place in the relationship where you have decided, yeah, we're really together. We're in this thing. Okay, so it can play out a whole lot different.
Let's go on to number 2.
Number 2, Susie, I'm curious about your response to this. This one's about no communication during separation. And we get a lot of questions like this and have over the years that we've been doing this work. And Kim writes, Kim asks, I would find it very helpful if you could talk about how to open lines of communication when it has been completely broken down during a separation. My husband and I have no communication whatsoever in over 3 months. I would like to reach out to him to establish communication, but I am reluctant to do so as it may be perceived as a push or chasing behavior. I would love to do this in a completely non-threatening way. Susie, how would you answer the question? How would you do that? How would you open the lines of communication in a situation like this? Because, not just here, but there's a lot of situations where people are, not just separated for 3 months, but, sometimes people are living in the same household and it can feel that way.
Right. Well, for one thing, it depends on the agreement that you had when you separated. So maybe there was, you decided that there wouldn't be any communication for a certain amount of time. And I don't know if that's true in this case, but you can go ahead and email or make some kind of contact and ask if communication is possible, if talking is possible. And it really depends on what you want to talk about. If you've got punishing on your mind, or you're but if you just want to see where you are, where the other person is in the in their thinking and I don't see anything wrong in just asking that in an email, or asking if you can talk by phone, or seeing what the other person wants, seeing if they are open. And they may not be. That's the reality. So for all kinds of reasons. But it seems to me that asking might be without seeming, clingy or whatever, but it might be a non-threatening way to do it.
And there was a question that popped up on the chat that kind of dovetails right into that. Someone asked, but how do you not come across as too overwhelming, clingy to someone who you really love? And this may sound like a strange answer, but ask.
From your heart.
Yeah.
Ask what they're wanting to, how they wanted to be with you, or how they see your relationship, without the whole idea of, I'm going to die if you don't love me.
And without some kind of weird manipulation or anything. Yeah. And just coming from this place of love and wanting
curiosity. I'm really curious how you feel about this right now. And they may or may not respond. I mean, that's the truth of it. If somebody is not able to really get in touch with feelings and doesn't want to hurt your feelings or whatever, there may not be a response. But just ask from a place of curiosity deep within you, and not from up here the stories of, oh, I don't want to come off too clingy, or,
Right.
or, oh, got to weigh every word. Just say, I'm just curious, and go from there. Hope that helped. Yes. All right. Number 3 is resented for doing the right thing.
Love these questions.
I know. These are great questions. My brother put me in charge of his investments so that when he passed, the money would go where he wanted. He has 3 children who receive the bulk of the money. 2 of them are fine. 1 now won't speak to me as she feels they should have received all of it, instead of 10% being given to a couple of friends who helped him throughout the last few years. I explained that I understood where she was coming from, but I'd given my word. She resents me for keeping my word to her father, but I couldn't look myself in the mirror if I hadn't done what he wanted. How do I deal with this? Excellent question.
Excellent question, because this question really, really goes right to the heart of how do you speak your truth and not be mean, not be hateful, not be anybody that's attacking where there's no need for any kind of attack. There's no need for any kind of defense. But this really speaks to staying in your heart and just following through on what's true.
Yeah, and being okay if somebody doesn't like it. Now, that's the hard part, but that's really what you've got to do, because it sounds like this woman was speaking from her heart and from her truth. And, not everybody's going to be happy about whatever it is.
Yeah.
And just knowing your truth, and it looks like she does know her truth. And, that person may come around at some point.
But as long as you are just simply in the truth of it, and you're just following through on what was asked of you, and you just, there's no judgment on your part about anything or anyone, because this has certainly happened to me, over and over in my life.
People pleasing, we all want to make everybody happy, but sometimes you can't.
Yeah.
All right, let's go on to
Oh yeah. The next one is wow. This one here, the essence of the question is about no trust after being cheated on. Now, all of these questions aren't about being cheated on, and our whole topic isn't about being cheated on, but that's certainly an issue where there's trust issues. So the person writes, I have anger and bitterness toward my husband who cheated and lied to me 2 years back. He apologized. And she says, we came close to our Lord and are happy, but his ex-girlfriend, married lady, still haunts me in my thoughts every day. And I feel very bitter and angry about the way she acted nice before. I wonder what was going on in her head. I want to get out of these feelings and live a happy life with my husband who loves me, but I don't trust him.
So here's the good news. It is in your head. And you can get her out of your head by not even thinking that you could know what was in her head. I mean, that's really the bottom line here. We don't know. And the longer that you focus on that, the bigger it gets. Now, she, did this woman act from a place of trustworthiness? Of course not. No. And apparently neither did her husband. But it sounds like they are coming back together. And what's standing in the way are the stories that you're reliving over and over and over, and not being in the present moment. So you got to make a choice. Do I want to keep living in the past that this did happen? Yes, it did. But do I want to keep living in the past and worried that he's going to do it again? Because she said that she doesn't know whether she can trust him.
And the thing that so many people in a situation like this sort of have amnesia about, and they forget about, is people so many times get caught up in wanting to know the why, wanting to know all the things about, why did this happen? What were they thinking and all like that, instead of going back to the true desire, and going back to the true desire and asking yourself, what is that true desire? Do you want to be in love with this person again? Do you want to be connected to this person again? Do you want to feel their heart? Do you want them to feel yours? Mm-hmm. Because as long as you're bringing the past into the present moment, none of those things are really going to be possible.
Right.
So you have to make a decision, I think, mm-hmm. that are you going to focus and fixate on all of that which you can never know the answer to, or are you just going to bring yourself to a place of love and possibility? And by the way, that doesn't mean that you're going to put up with behavior
right.
that's unacceptable to you. So that's a whole different question.
Well, and I think you're really talking about this next question here, how to start over with the spouse in regards to communication to begin to trust him again. Communication, connection, interest in me, and intimacy was greater when he was hiding stuff from me. Hard to trust when he says it was a mistake. It's over. I learned my lesson. I have moved on. No access to emails, Facebook, etc. So unsure if the connection to the other person has stopped, or if his obtaining of pictures from other men of their wives has stopped. Living as roommates and parents. He doesn't seem happy at all, and I'm tired of trying. And, in this case, I would say that, ask him what he wants. Because it sounds like there's a lot of tug of war and pretending and living as roommates and not communicating. But you first figure out what you want and then ask him what he wants.
And this is a theme you're hearing a lot tonight, is, again, no matter what has happened, if the goal in your communication is to build trust instead of destroy it, and if the goal is to bring that other person closer to you, I love what this person says, this woman says right at the very end, is he doesn't seem happy at all, and I am tired of trying. Mm-hmm. And, if you're somebody who's tired of trying, mm-hmm. and so you're going to act from that place, and the other person is going to know it and they're going to feel it. Mm-hmm. And that they're just going to feel that. And so your communication is going to come from that place. The fact that this woman, Susie, is still in the relationship, but she's emotionally checked out of it, would tell me that it would be almost impossible for her communication to show up from a place of love and a place of an invitation if she's tired of trying.
Well, and he obviously isn't participating.
Right.
So, it's that, and we're not putting her down at all, because, this is a rough situation here. But what what Otto's saying is that if you're tired of trying, give up the rope of pulling and tugging and trying, but find out what it is that you want and what he wants, in that relationship. We've got a couple of comments here about the question about the person who was couldn't accept what she did with her brother. It's very hard to accept because she's my niece, a person I was very close to. And yeah, that is hard. And still.
And standing in your truth.
Yeah.
But standing in your truth from a place of love.
Right. And there is disappointment. Sure.
Standing in your truth from a place of love is very often difficult. But that's where the connection is built, is when you're standing in your truth from a place of total love. Because when you are just simply saying what's true, there's nothing to defend against.
Right. And just stay in love.
Yeah, and that's so huge when you realize that you can wish that things were different. You can wish that people were different in your life. And sometimes they're not.
Yeah.
And all you got to know is when you show up as love and from truth, from that place, that's all you can do.
Right.
That's all you can do.
And Fred says, people often start heartfelt conversations saying, no matter what is said, let's just always be honest with one another. No matter what you say will not hurt or change our relationship. But it does, and someone or both parties end up hurting in one way or another. What do you say about that? I would say that is a blanket statement that I would never make. That it's, if you're going to start a conversation, just say, this is what's true for me in this moment. Instead of, we're always going to be honest with one another. Well, in this moment, this is what is true for me. So I'd love to hear what's true for you too in this moment.
And honesty is such a tricky thing because our whole communication comes from what we're believing in the moment. So take someone who believes that their partner is having an affair, and they could be in their mind saying something that was from their heart and completely honest. But if they believed that their partner was having an affair and they weren't, that's going to come out completely different than if they knew their partner wasn't having an affair and they started a conversation with them. So totally different circumstance, and the honesty can show up in a different way, but honesty comes from what we believe. And here's the fascinating thing about what we believe. It's based on our thinking, and our thinking changes from moment to moment.
Right. And you can get to the core of really what you believe underneath all that thinking when you kind of quiet and get quiet. Yeah. Okay, where are we? Safety in relationship. I married my husband about 8 years ago. When we met, I felt he was really interested in me, that he treasured me, and I felt safe. Safety was so important because I had never truly felt safe before. In the years that follow, I did not feel safe. I felt somewhat betrayed, and now he is not particularly well. Spinal stenosis. It adds the element of physical insecurity to the emotional insecurity, and I wonder if I will need to keep quiet, that it's too late to feel we're on the same page. What do you say, Otto?
Well, this question this person is talking about safety.
Mm-hmm.
And this whole thing about safety is so huge for people, because it's like we were talking about a few minutes ago, Susie, is where does trust come from? Well, it's the same thing of where does safety come from? Safety comes from, in other words, that I feel safe with this person. Somebody might say that I really feel safe with you.
Or financial things too. Definitely.
It can be emotional things. It can be financial things. And again, safety, you can translate that down to, I feel safe that I'm going to get what I want here. Mm-hmm. Or I feel safe you could translate it down to, I feel safe that I'm going to get what I need. And it's when you're coming from that place, it's going back to what's really wanted here. Is it the desire for safety, or is it the desire for connection? Mm-hmm. Is it the desire for love? Is it the desire to truly connect with that other person? Because all these things that you want are going to come through that.
Right. And there is a element of safety in your physicality. If you're not physically safe, then there is a problem, and you need to find a place to be safe and be.
You're talking about people. Physical safety
your physical body. But she's talking about emotional insecurity too. And that is an inside job. Your emotional insecurity comes from you and what the stories that you're telling yourself, and that you're believing that you're not enough, or that, it's whatever limiting story. So it's really, what is it that you want? Do you want more love rather than what? Safety. And what does it mean to get on the same page? What exactly does that mean to you? So those are just questions to think about. How about the next one, Otto?
Are we on number 6 here?
We are.
And this is an interesting one, because the person that wrote into submitted this question. This question is about always being wrong and not knowing why. And the person writes, we're having a problem communicating with our youngest son, who's 49 years old, involving trust. I'm 76. My wife and I have been married 57 years and raised 4 children. 5 years ago, our eldest son died after a very long battle with MRSA. During that time, we exhausted our savings and lost our home because we were blind to our other obligations in an attempt to spend time with our son, who we hadn't seen in 18 years. We've been living with our youngest son part of the year in the Northwest, so we understand the difficulties involved with 2 families living in one home. We've tried to maintain a calm environment. And this is the brief part he says about the question. Yeah. So we're now living in the Midwest with our other son. There was a problem as we were preparing to travel. It seems like no matter how hard we tried, we said or did something wrong. Mm-hmm. We have been told that there is a problem, not what the problem is. We feel as though we need to fix an unknown.
Well, you sure can't fix an unknown, can you?
Nope. And that's the key here is, I want to use a quick example that how hundreds of times in our world together, in our life together, we have said to one another, help me to understand this. We've actually said things like, I don't want to make anything up here. But so those are just ways into a conversation. But the whole thing here is the unknown. And you've heard us throughout the course of our conversation with you so far talking about showing up as love and showing up as an invitation. But in this situation, it's just simply, you got to ask.
And ask from a not defensive place.
Yeah.
Because obviously there's something going on with these people, and there's some problem that they're not willing to talk about.
And so the job of that, of the person who wrote this question, your job is to invite them to share with you what the issue is. And again, we've talked about this a little bit tonight, is the whole curiosity thing of really getting curious,
sure.
And from a place of wonder. And for me, Susie, it wouldn't be out of line at all for me to ask, if I were this person, I'm really not sure what the challenge is in this situation. Would you be willing to tell me?
Right.
Would you be willing to share with me how you see this situation?
And then listen to what they have to say without being defensive. Now, that's easier said than done, but when you think, okay, I want to hear their truth, and then we'll deal with whatever that is, then you can open your heart to really listening. And like Fred said, but sometimes we only hear what we want to. And yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And when we do that, we have to realize it. Like my friend, who she heard that they were picking on her, these students that I talked about earlier. And that's what she was thinking. And that wasn't the truth at all. So when you hear yourself do that, just stop, and just, okay, let me take a breath and just, I'm open to hearing what it is that you really want to say to me.
And also also asking from a true place of inviting them to share. How do you see what's going on here?
Right.
It seems like there's something that you're really,
there's some tension,
whatever. And I also would talk about, I don't want to make up a story here.
Right.
But our relationship is really important to me, and I would love it if you would just share with me how you see what's going on, and I'll try my best to just hear you.
Yes.
And you just stop. And with every part of your being, you just try to hear them. You just try to listen. You just try to stay.
Yeah.
And that is sometimes a miracle cure. When you just stay and you just listen to someone with no agenda, no blame, no guilt, no wanting to defend or to fight back, because you know what? Everybody on the face of this earth wants to be heard.
Yeah.
They want to be heard. And the more you can show up and let them know that you hear them, you see them, you feel them, even if you don't agree with them, that is sometimes a miracle.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
Okay. Others not keeping their word. That's a big trust issue.
Oh, it's huge.
I am having a hard time with a family member keeping their word about an agreement we made. For example, now they say they are waiting to hear back from another person who totally has nothing to do with the agreement this family member and I made. I now feel that I cannot trust that the family member will stick to our agreement, and I don't know what to do. How do I communicate this to them in a way that will build trust between us? For example, would it be an option to say to them, I feel uncomfortable when I notice you are changing the agreement we made. I would like to build trust with you. Well, I don't think that would be a wise way to go. I feel uncomfortable when I notice you're changing the agreement. What I think the crux of this thing is that this person, for whatever reason, has decided that they need somebody else's input. So I would, like you're talking about curiosity, I would want to know what is it that this person, what kind of input do you need from this person? And how do you think this impacts our agreement? I would want to know that rather than saying something about how uncomfortable I am with all this. I don't know. What do you think, Otto?
Well, again, when you stop making up stories.
Yeah. And we all do.
And we all do.
Yeah.
When you slow it all down.
Yeah.
And you stop making up stories about what's going on here, you can, the answers always come.
Mm.
And when you start opening and communicating from this place of, I wonder how, first of all, I might be seeing it differently, or how I could see it differently. And then you begin to maybe ask them different kinds of questions. Like, I'm noticing that you're wanting to get some, that you're wanting to change things, or you're considering changing the agreement that we had. I'm curious about, how that would look for you. I'm curious about why you want to change the agreement. I'm wondering about what part of this maybe isn't working for you.
Yeah, from a place of curiosity and love. That's how you keep your connection with people. And when you wear it on your sleeve that you have been, that this person didn't follow through or whatever, without asking and without talking with that person, then you're really destroying trust.
Yeah.
Which is what our title is about. And I hope you all are getting ways that people destroy trust, that we all do, and ways that they build it.
Yeah.
Okay. Can't open up after husband shuts down.
This is question 8.
Conversation. Yeah. I don't feel that I can open up and have dialogue on things that matter to me. My husband seems to either get bored or wants to jump in and fix it with a premature solution. Yes, lots of people do that. That's what it looks to me. For example, we had a short conversation about the school my son is enrolled in. It's a great school, but I have a sense that it's not for my son. And my husband responded by saying I was making too much of it, and if I felt that strongly, to take him out. All I wanted to explore is what I am seeing so far and keep the conversation open as we see more about this. I shut down a bit and the conversation ended with, okay. And I walked away with a feeling inside that I got to see on my own and make a decision on my own. Doesn't seem like a very big issue as I write this, but it's what came to mind. And actually, it is a big issue because it's these small daily things that happen that do tear down trust. And I don't know what you want to say about this, but we all have different communication styles that we've learned, usually from our family of origins. And this man obviously has learned not to do too much discussion, that he needs to fix things, okay? And she wants to discuss, which is, kind of, that would be a good thing to do. But what do you say, Otto?
Well, I think what I want to say about this is I'm recalling a situation that you and I were involved in with each other a few weeks ago. And, we really are connected. We're really close. And the thing that we were dealing with at that moment was really difficult. And it was something that you saw totally differently than I did. Mm-hmm. And I really saw it differently, or at least in my own mind. And I mean, I really saw it differently. And to the point that I was almost totally shut down about it. But what happened was, one of the most difficult things I've ever had to do was, in spite of how much I believed I was right, or how much I believed that my way was the better way, was to open and ask you the following question, which was, tell me how you see this. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't easy when it was something that the other person sees so differently. When that other person sees something so differently than you, all you can ever do is try to see how they see it. All you can ever do is see how you can open to them.
Mm-hmm. Right. And sometimes I say, well, I can see how you think that way. So how can we move forward in this? And what is it that we might agree on?
Well, in our case, what we really agreed on was that nothing has really changed, in that the love and the connection mm-hmm. is really there. Mm-hmm. And it can be anything that you agree on, but you go back to, where's that connection? Mm-hmm. Where is that place where both of you really see and want the same thing? That's the connecting point here. Is right. Where do you both want the same thing? It's just that you have different ideas about how this might play out.
Mm-hmm. And going back to this woman, it looks like she had she was in tune with her son, and her husband was saying that he didn't see it. He didn't see it that way. He didn't see that the son, really was having a rough time or whatever. And the only thing that you can do is, okay, this is what I've seen, and this is what I think we should do. What do you think we ought to do? What's your idea? And see if he'll open up and say, well, leaving there or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which kind of flows in a way into our next question. Yeah. We've got just a few questions to go here that we're covering. Again, we're talking about how communication builds or destroys trust, and you don't even realize it. So what do you do when somebody you're in a relationship with, especially, let's say, a husband, shuts down during a disagreement? We've really been talking about this.
We've been
talking about this. Is, one of our teachers uses the phrase, you have to stay in the conversation. Mm-hmm. And if you stay in the conversation, that's where the shutting down doesn't seem to happen. Is if you're staying in the conversation and you're open to seeing how they see it, how they look at it. And again, it doesn't mean that you have to do it their way. It doesn't mean that they're right and you're wrong, or that you got to bend over backwards and please them just to keep the peace, or none of those kind of things.
And sometimes in a disagreement, if you're too emotionally charged up, it's not the time to listen to each other or to talk. It's a time to calm down and to say, well, let's take a breather here, and maybe we can talk about this tonight or tomorrow or whatever. Revisit it when we're both calmer.
This whole idea of being emotionally charged is one thing. You and I have even talked to our coaching clients about the idea of, even if one or both of you are tired, that sometimes it doesn't make sense to have a conversation about something when one of you or both of you are not at your best. Sometimes we will suggest to our coaching clients, maybe it's best that you not have that conversation at 10:30 at night when you both have had a long day already.
Yeah.
Maybe it would be better to actually talk about like schedule it like you would a meeting, but a meeting with love, a meeting of two hearts.
Right. And, this speaks to big differences in the way people communicate.
Yeah.
And when you recognize the differences, then you can be more open to understanding a little bit more about where that person's coming from. And, some people don't apologize. And we're not saying that feels very good for the other person, but, there's something, they didn't learn it. Somehow they've got the idea it's weak or whatever. But you look for a place where you can come together, whether there's an apology or, the accountability or whatever. But where can we come together? What do we want for our future? What do we want? Like sometimes we've talked about, how do we want this to go the next time it comes around? How do we want this to be different? And sometimes we can, really, we've in the past come up with some good things that we actually do.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty wild. Pretty amazing.
Yeah.
The next one, Susie, people have written into us a lot about this topic over the years. When, especially from women, when, let's say, a husband or a boyfriend has female friends. And so this woman writes in, it would help me a bit if you could touch on how to deal with your man having a boatload of female friends. What is and what is not appropriate?
Oh, yeah. And that
great question.
It really is. And that's really subjective because it could be different for every relationship. But going back to the crux of what she's really asking, and we wondered, is she not feeling important to him? Is she feeling like these women are more important to him? So you have to get to what's really underneath, and what is going on? Is he out every night with his friends, these women friends? Is he, not paying any attention to you? What's really going on? That's really what you want to find out about. Is if you don't feel important to him, then that's something that you can, let's talk about how we can revitalize our relationship.
And how this woman can talk about what she would really love from him.
Yes.
Instead of focusing on what she doesn't want and what she doesn't necessarily find as appealing.
Yeah. Yeah. So focusing on, what is it that I really want here? Do I want more of his time, more of his attention,
more of his love, more of what is the thing that she wants?
Yeah, because it never works right if somebody puts down rules. Okay, you can only have this many friends and this much time with these friends, and but it does if you come from the attitude of let's have regular time that we spend together. or whatever.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Let's take Fred's question here. Since relationships cannot grow without communication, and we sometimes hit a wall in communicating, we have hardly anything to say to one another. What do you do, since that is an act of intimacy?
We've been hinting at this and pointing to this throughout our whole time in this conversation, and that is getting curious. So we know people who have been together for 40 or 50 years, mm-hmm. who are still genuinely curious about their mate. We know people, in fact, we could say that us, as of the time we're doing this, we're having this conversation with you, this is year 22 for us. And we still love having conversations with each other, because the conversations that we have, we don't make any assumptions about how the other person is. We don't make any assumptions about, well, they see it this way, or they're never going to be open to this. So it's the whole curiosity question of inviting something new, first within yourself, of being open to something new, and then getting curious, because I will guarantee you that other person, if you've been together for 4 days, 4 months, 40 years, or 80 years, they are not the same person that they were a week ago, a year ago, 5 years ago, 20, 30, 40 years ago. No matter how long you've been together, they are not that person. Every single one of us on the face of the earth, we're always changing, growing, evolving. We're different people. And, the whole magic, I think, is in staying connected, is in staying connected. How can you, Susie and I were celebrating her daughter's birthday recently, and when we were getting ready to go out to eat, I made a comment to Susie, look how far I've come in my food choices. I was recalling when Susie and I first got together, that me coming from this family who loved, down home Southern cooking, and I had never seen what pesto was.
Yeah.
And I was just amazed when I looked in Susie's freezer when we first got together, all these bags of pesto that she had made. And now I love pesto. And it's like, we're always changing. Mm-hmm. We're always growing. We're always evolving. It's just that we get it in our mind, that person is like that. This situation is always going to be like this. So we've made up this story about the way things are, and we've put ourselves and we've put the people in our life in a little box, and we've put like cement and concrete around the box so that they can't get out of the box in our own minds, and we can't jump out of the box, and we can't drill through the holes in the wall and all like that.
And it might be that you find something new to do.
Yeah.
And do it together.
Yeah.
It might, because there are lots of things to do in our town, and it's like, find something new, and see if she wants to do it with you.
Yeah.
Should we try the last one here, Otto, or are we good here?
Let's talk just a little bit. We've got this one final question, and that is about withdrawing and when you can't communicate. And I don't even want to go into the question, but the idea of when somebody withdraws and somebody can't communicate, when you withdraw, that's a strategy. That's a strategy for feeling safe, for getting what it is that you want. And the whole question becomes, is your strategy working for you? So you got to go back to.
I think that's whatever the problem, the communication problem, the trust problem that you have, is the strategy you're working right now that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Is that working? Yeah.
Because when you're talking about how you communicate and whether that communication is either building or destroying trust, you got to go back and reconnect to the question, what do I want? What do I really want when I drop down into my heart? What was the reason I wanted to be with this person? Because I loved them, I cared about them. And same thing applies in our other relationships. Do we want to connect with the people in our life? Do we really want to feel them? Do we want them to feel us? And when you drop down into that place, then the withdrawing seems to sort of take care of itself, because when you're showing up as an invitation and you genuinely want to connect, like I say, going back to what's the real goal? The real goal isn't to make them wrong and to make you right. The real goal isn't to cut them down in some way, or the real goal isn't to make puff yourself up and make yourself superior in any way. We think that the goal is love and connection, which you can always grow. Right. You can always grow.
Before we end, let's take Patty's question, because it goes along with what you've been saying. My husband very, very rarely talks to me unless it's about logistics. He now says he's an introvert, wasn't before, and when in a group talks until the cows come home. I've tried to talk with love and curiosity, and he stonewalls me.
Yeah. One of the things that occurs to me about this question is that asking him questions that don't overwhelm him, and we've been hinting and pointing to this throughout this conversation, is, let's say it's something that happened, let's say in your neighborhood. Did you see the way so-and-so, was doing this? And, how do you feel about that? Because the difference goes from how do you think, at an intellectual level, to how do you feel? So that's the chasm that has to be breached here, is the difference between what do you think and how do you feel. That is where the magic is, I think. And we're all introverts at different times and in different situations. And I think that, there are times, I can think about myself, that there are times when I'm an introvert and there's times when I'm not.
And maybe there's some things going on with him that don't have anything to do with you. Keeping with the love and the curiosity, keep opening to him, as Otto's saying. Yeah.
We have loved talking to you, having this conversation with you. If there's anybody who wants to have a conversation with one of us about whatever's going on in your world, if there's a situation that you want to have a conversation with us about, we are certainly open to doing that. And we would love to. And so just send us an email. And you can also, you just go to our website, susieandotto.com. There's a contact form on the website. Just go there, fill out the form. We will get it. So, and we'll certainly respond.
We'll arrange a time to talk.
Yeah. And so hopefully this has been helpful to you. And
we love all of you coming and
yeah,
your questions, and the people that are going to listen on the replay.
Yeah. We're Susie and Otto Collins from susieandotto.com. Thanks so much for being here. We've loved it, and hopefully you got a lot out of this. Bye, everybody.
Bye.